When you click too many times. All right, thanks everyone for joining. It's great to be back in person and seeing all of these lovely faces. It's been a while since I've been in front of human beings in a presentation, so bear with me a little bit. But today I've kind of gone back into my notebooks, if you will, and thought about my journey through product marketing. And I'm gonna talk about how product marketing is not about the product. And I know you're all probably thinking this woman is crazy, product is in our job titles, this doesn't make sense, please don't leave. I promise it'll all make sense. In fact, most of us probably already recognize that product is not really the focus of our jobs, even though it is in our job titles. So who am I? I'm Mindy Grissom. I actually started off my career many years ago at Kellogg's. I worked in the CPG world, and I thought I wanted to be best friends with Tony the Tiger. So I went off to go get my MBA to be a brand manager, and I ran off to Seattle, where I fell in love with technology. And I learned about this new position called product marketing. It was new to me, because obviously I was in a different world. And it was really the brand manager position for technology, which I just loved. And during that time, I made that shift. And since then, I've gotten to launch a lot of products. I've launched X-ray machines. I've worked in video conferencing rooms. If anyone remembers what a conference room is, we're all gonna have fun remembering how to use the technology in those rooms again. And then most recently, I've been in the data and analytics space, where currently I am the senior director at LiveRamp. And so I usually come into companies as we try to figure out how to change our messaging, how to be more customer focused, how to increase our sales, how to do all of these things, right? Where product marketing is a little bit broken and trying to fix some of those places. Now, what I've noticed is when I go into companies, every company has a different view of product marketing, right? You are the central person of marketing that does every single thing. Has anyone ever experienced that, where they think you do the website, they think you write the press release, they think you do every single thing yourself. They don't realize that there's this whole other marketing team that does help you on that. They always say, oh, you're the person who just creates slides. No, I am not. I am not that person. You do data sheets, you do technical documentation. Sometimes, yeah, I do data sheets, sure, but I don't do tech. No, I'm not the technical writer. So with all of this confusion, right, people are always asking you, what do you do, right? They're trying to get a mental map of how are you going to help me? And when we aren't able to give a clear answer, we end up kind of living in this sad little product box. And I'll talk about that in a second. The first time I ever had that question, what is the difference between product marketing and marketing? Or what is the difference between product and product marketing? I was not very eloquent at that. I was like, it's product marketing. Don't you get it? It's different than marketing because it's about the product. And they're like, well, we sell products. Isn't all marketing product marketing? And I was like, yes, it is. But because we sometimes aren't able to give those clear answers, we get put into that product box of oh, you just talk about the product, right? You just talk about the features. You're the launch person. So we end up falling into some common traps. The first, has anyone fallen victim to the I just need syndrome? Yep. I just need a data sheet. I just need a paragraph of copy. I just need that one slide and I will sell millions and millions of dollars. I just need that one sales deck. To my salespeople, I tell you, I don't believe you. If I had that one sales deck, that one slide that was selling millions and millions of dollars, covering every single use case, I would not be at this company. I would be selling my secrets to all of the other product marketers so that they could elevate themselves to create that one slide and that one slide deck. But when we focus just in on the product, right, they try to put us into, I just need a deck about the product. I just need something that's going to tell me how the product performs in CPG in XYZ. Another common trap that we fall into when we are focusing solely in on the product, or focus too much in on the product, are internal company biases. We all work with a lot of smart people. But then we start to hear, I believe that this one customer said, this one company did. And so we listen to some of these voices because they're smart, they're intelligent people, right? We're focused in on the product, how we want the product to perform in the market. And because of that, we end up having these issues of just like I, right? It's all about the company, it's all about the product, it's all about the internal places. And, oh, I don't think I want to enable the extension. Maybe I do? I can't actually check that box. If there's a way for us to check the box in the back with the presentation, can't go forward quite yet. Acrobat for Chrome, who knew? This is your next one that you need to have in there. So when we are thinking about those internal company biases, right, we start to think, okay, this customer must really, really care about this because our product team cares about it, because this one sales team cares about it. Again, we start to fall into those traps just about the product. And finally, it's all about the product, right? Everything we do is product, product, product. Currently, at my company, I walked in, and all of our collateral is, hi, I'm LiveRamp, and I'd like to sell you 7,000 things with 13,000 really, really cool features. And a lot of us end up in these traps, right? Because a salesperson just needed that one data sheet. They just needed that one slide, and we created that, and that's now how they are selling. So we're talking about features. We launch new features. We get really excited about that. We tell people all these technical details. My favorite is naming. I hate naming. Everything gets named, every feature, everything, and we're like all cutesy and fun, and we don't make sense because people aren't thinking about us in that kind of way, right? People aren't thinking about us the way that we think about us as a company. They aren't thinking about the product the way that we think about the product. And that's where some of the problems start to come into play. So I pose to you that PMM is not about the product. So I'm going to take a shift here for a second. I want you all to currently think about something that you are in the market for. Could be personal, business, doesn't really matter. Something that requires a little bit of research. One thing that I thought about was a phone, right? When I'm thinking about a phone, I want a phone that's like not too big because like I don't want it to feel weird on my face. I have glasses now, so like I don't want it to be too small because like I can't see. I drop it a lot. I want it to be semi-waterproof because I'm active, and I want a good camera. So I went on to a lot of different phone websites, and what do they tell me? 6.6 inches with 13.36 megapixels, and it's IP67, 68 rated. Now those are all good pieces of information, but as a consumer and as a headline reader, as most people are now, I don't know what that means. What is IP67? IP address? I don't know what those things mean. And then we compound that with these buzzwords, these names of products. No one wakes up and thinks about, I need to digitally transform with the power of the cloud today. No one thinks about I need that AI solution. And I've never heard a customer say, if this was just enterprise ready, I would buy this today. Because what does enterprise ready actually mean, right? But we put these words in there. Sometimes we use these because we hear research. They're using these words, so we think we should use these words. We think our customers must be thinking about these words because the research is there. This is how people think, right? Or we need to sound smart, or we need to sound edgy, or we need to sound like we understand what we're doing. But by doing all of this, by putting all of these confusing things around the product, we end up confusing people. We're busy. We are humans. We're busy. Don't make it hard for me, right? I don't want to have to dig through all of the buzzwords, dig through all of the technical jibber jabber that you are telling me in order to understand what you actually do. What are you actually solving for me with your enterprise-ready, digitally transforming solution? Right? Just tell me how you're going to fix my problem. So I love launching products. It's one of my favorite parts of product marketing, right? Because you always get to learn about everything that's coming out. It's really new and it's really fun. Sometimes I used to think it was really fun to name things until the first time I went through it, and I was like, nope, never again, never again. But what ends up happening is we focus in on the product, right? We're so excited. It took us 16 sprints to get this new feature, this new product out to market. But when, at the end of the day, oftentimes, sometimes due to internal politics or whatever, we listen to the smarter people that we think are in the room, we end up sounding like this.
Hey guys, so what I'm most excited about with the new expansion is that we're now going to have player-driven, persistent environmental changes.
All right, if you guys haven't seen that show, it's actually Mythic Quest from Apple TV. Highly recommend. But this is for a video game, right? She is launching something for a video game. Now, did anyone actually know what that feature would do? There's a couple people, right? Okay, now their target market are gamers, and so there's some coders in there. They probably understood some of that. But for the most part, right, what is persistent environmental changes? Like, these are things that we often say, right? We tell these people technical details. Now, the feature is actually that someone could go create their own world and continue to live in it in the video game, right? That's what that was, actually, at the end of the day. But when we focus in on the product, we're focusing in on what just happened, what is enhanced, what's optimized, what's faster, right? We are not telling the story, we're telling them how maybe we just don't suck less, how we want to be more competitive, those types of things. So instead of focusing in on the product, focus in on the buyer and user. Now you may be thinking, yeah, we do focus in on the buyer and user, like duh, like that's easy to do. It is, but we often lose sight of the buyer and the user along the way, right? Because we're so focused in on the product, we're so focused in on ourselves, we lose sight of the buyer and the user. Now, again, I always say to build your foundation on personas. Everyone here is probably like, yes, we have personas, we get it, we've built them. This is more than going through the motions of getting the demographics and all of the little research to fill out the nice little pretty profile with the person's, picture on there, come up with a cutesy name. It's about truly knowing who they are and knowing them like a friend. You should know your personas like really, really well. If you're focusing on users or buyers, like, what are they actually thinking about? What actually bothers them during the day? Don't have interviews with personas and think about, how does my product fix your problem? Go just learn about the human beings that are behind there. That's really where you get some insights. I've done hundreds of persona interviews, and one insight that we actually came up with when we turned from like focusing in on ourselves and focusing in on the person was that they had a people problem. They had a technology problem, but they had a people problem. So what did that actually mean? Well, it meant that we could go to the product team, head of development, and say, hey, these people have a people problem. Is there, and we could discuss it in more detail. How do we fix this? Can we fix this with technology? If we can't, what are the other ways that we can fix this for our personas? Maybe it's a guide that we can just give them. There was a communication issue that they were having. And this is not just one person, this is across all sorts of organizations. So it allowed us to say, maybe we fix it with the product, maybe we fix it with resources, but at least we can go to our folks and say, we understand your pain. Like, we know we can fix your problem with technology, but we know that that's not your only problem, right? That only fixes 80% of your problem. You still have a 20% pain point, and we're here with you. And that's really where people start to see the value holistically from your company instead of just, oh, they have a product and I can turn to a different competitor at any given point in time. When you are listening to them, how do they describe their problem? This is really key. I know a lot of us think like, yeah, we know how they're using some of the terms and technology, but really break it down. Like, how are people actually talking about their problems? Like, what are they actually Googling? I've spent way too many times with SEO where they've put words like collaboration that no one ever types into a Google search, but we think we should because they're like, oh yes, they are definitely searching for collaboration. No one goes and says like, I want to go collaborate with someone, right? They're thinking about like, I need to share something. However their different terms are. Think about how they are describing their problem and use that to your advantage when you are building out some of the messaging. And when you're thinking about what we are doing today, are we making it harder for them to understand? Do they have to go through all those buzzwords? Do they have to go through the technical details? How hard are we making it for them to relate how they think about their problem? And then what do they really care about? Not what do we want them to care about. I've fallen victim to this too many times, right? I love our product and there's 7,000 amazing things about it, so I must tell everyone in this one sentence that now has like 13,000 words in it because I had to put every value prop in there. But I guarantee you, 99% of the time, no one cares about everything, right? And when you know your persona, you'll know exactly what they care about. So you aren't having to put that niche feature, that niche value prop into every single thing. You can be much more targeted. And again, your customers are gonna thank you because they're gonna understand what the value actually is from your product versus, oh, that's cool, they have 10,000 different features in their product. All right, so then you need to be an expert in your products. Okay, so I know, I said it wasn't about the product, now I'm telling you to be an expert in your products. It just doesn't sound right. You need to be an expert in your products because you don't want to rely on other people telling you what's important. You know your persona, and now you need to know your product so you can combine those two. If you're relying on product managers, if you're relying on development, if you're relying on loudest voices in the room, you're not going to be able to get that value for your persona, right? You're going to start putting out those random features that no one cares about. So you really need to be an expert in your product in order to know what value is actually being delivered or what's frustrating from a persona perspective, right? And then that allows you to play the role of your persona. There are so many times that I have been asked to launch something that has taken a long time for people to develop, and it's a great development, but no one cares. And I have to go back and tell them, no one cares, and it's really, really hard, right? And it shouldn't come off as product marketing thinks that what you developed was stupid, right? That's not the route we want to go. But when we're able to play the role of our persona, we can just simply ask questions, right? How do you intend users to use this? Who do you see as being valuable for this? Asking questions from that perspective. As this person, they really care about XYZ. How does this influence my life? Do we really think that we need that press release for that, right? Is that really going to drive someone to go purchase, investigate our product? Again, about being the role of the persona, not being product marketing thinks that this is wrong, but being able to say, I understand our personas so well, I see how this works in our product, help me understand how this connects, right? Always ask questions. That's the best way to go about having some of those more difficult conversations. I have told some product managers that their baby was ugly, and that does not go so well when you're like, this is dumb. And they're like, whoa, that hurt. And they're like, okay, let's take a step back, right? And I'm not attacking you, I was coming at it from the wrong way. So asking questions is always the best way. So again, I always say, focus in, ground yourself in the buyer and the user. Understand your product. Understand, yes, we need to highlight things, and I understand that there are internal politics that sometimes drive some of this. But it doesn't matter what level of the organization you are at. If you are an associate, if you are a VP, you can start to drive the change that allows people to understand, like, go into it from a buyer and user perspective. Go into it from the customer perspective, not from a product, not from us, not from an internal perspective. anyone can start to drive that change, and that's really where the power of product marketing actually starts to live. I know we can't remove the term product from our titles, because then what are we? We're just marketing. It's a hard place to be. We can't be customer marketing, because there's that exists too. But what you can do is just ground yourself in the customer themselves, and that's really where you're going to see that change. So I appreciate everyone hanging with me to see how product marketing is actually not about the product. Hopefully there were some insights in there, but anyone can feel free to reach out. I don't know if we have time for questions, but my email is up there, and I'm always happy to have some chats with people.
Thank you, Mindy. I loved your presentation. It was like therapy for me a little bit, especially on the, are you the people who just do the slide decks? Like a little tear welled up in my eye. So we do have some questions in here. So the first one is, we have sellers that say these sales tools are great, but download metrics suggest they're hardly used. How do we dig deeper to figure out what they really need?
Yeah, this is great. So one way that you can go about this is, one, listening to sales calls themselves, seeing how people are actually using things. Because sometimes you can say, yeah, download metrics they might have it and they save it on their computer and use it a variety of different ways. So sometimes our enablement platforms don't allow us to see some of those metrics. But honestly, like, one, hearing them do it live. I love Gong and those types of technologies that allows you to like listen in without listening in, being there. But also going and asking people. Salespeople love to talk about all the things that they need. Now, don't just go to like one, but like kind of go across all, because they might say, I need a data sheet, but that's not really what they need. So again, treat them like a persona. Ask them like questions. It's not just, I need a piece of collateral. Like, what are they actually trying to solve for?
Awesome, thank you. Let's see, next one up. How do you become an expert of your product when you have so many products?
Yeah, it takes time. I would say always focus in on like your biggest one. It takes a while, but you slowly get there. So if you have one that's your main product, focus in on that one, or which one is driving the most business, right? Those types of things. Most aren't usually equivalent in an organization, so focus on the biggest one, and then slowly expand your way. But I think the best way to kind of become an expert is not just like always digging in it yourself, but listening to customers. Like when trade shows actually existed, and we could go and hear customers, that's a great way to hear and become an expert, because you're hearing the different use cases that people are using versus you just kind of like pounding around in there.
Awesome. All right, let's see, what's next? What if our organization doesn't prioritize PMMs getting access to personas and customer interviews? You don't know the customers as well as you should.
Yeah, so I've been there where you can't get to customers, but guess what? There's people that exist in the world that you can go find. So a lot of times I actually just go on LinkedIn into my own network and say, hey, you have a title that's what I'm trying to target, and I just want to talk to you. People love to talk about themselves. So at any point in time, I guarantee you, if you went on LinkedIn, you could find people, and hopefully your product marketing leadership would allow you to even like give like a gift card or something that can help entice if they are not in your network. Right.
So how do you help other functions focus on the customer rather than the product?
Yeah, this one's tough. Because like ripping something out of a salesperson's hand when they just like walk in and just talk about the product is not great. What you try to do, one, with like sales teams, is to show them people who are successful, who've been doing this, right? Find a person that you can use, that you can kind of help be your champion. That's one way to help sales teams, because once one person does it, they all seem to do it. So that's one great way. And honestly, it does it itself. Once you focus in on the customer, like, yes, like sales actually starts to win a lot more, so that will kind of happen naturally. But other ones, again, the product managers, they're trying to solve problems for their customers. So again, I like to be that connection point to try to connect them with customers, to hear it themselves. Don't just come at it from yourself. You can find some folks that they can start to hear it themselves as well, and that starts to transform that.
Yeah, and I think it's good to do those customer interviews together with the product team. Because a lot of times my product team will go do the interviews themselves, and then we kind of come out with different perspectives. And so doing that together, regrouping afterwards, and sharing those takeaways and making sure you're on the same page is really helpful too. Just a quick show of hands. How many people in here work in the marketing department? Okay, versus how many are under the product department? Okay. Probably if I were just randomly throwing out a number, I'd say like 60-40, 70-30. So that ties into the next question of, do you think that view changes depending on where the PMM lives within the organization? So is that lens different if you're in product versus under marketing?
So I've had the unique experience of working under both at any given point in time. I don't think that the view should change. It should still always be about the customer. And it just depends on how you frame it for different people. So when you're thinking about the lens of the customer from the product perspective, it's, again, partnering with them during those customer interviews to understand some of that, versus when you're under the marketing team, right, it's a little bit more on the targeting side of things. So I think it just depends on more of the positioning internally that you have to do instead.
Yeah, and I think the mindset too is more current users and how they're using it, and data we're pulling out of that's driving where product wants to focus their prioritization, versus us looking at what the market wants and the key buyers want. So a little bit of conflict there sometimes. So let's see, the next one, when the user is not, sorry, it bounced up there, your buyer, but the buyers could also be the users. How much focus on the content for users should you have?
So it depends. So there's different routes, right? Buyers are obviously important because they sign the check, but they are not always like your champion. They are not always the ones who have the most influence. A buyer could put all of the influence on their own users to be like, hey, just tell me if this is good or not. So it really depends on, every product's going to be slightly different. But I don't think everything should just be buyer or everything should just be user. There's a very healthy mix because you have to have both within the buying cycle. So it truly just depends. I don't have like a percentage. I wish I could give a percentage.
All right, I think we have time for a couple more questions here. So does how you go about building a foundation on what your personas really care about change when you're creating a new category?
Creating a new category, this gives me some PTSD. No, it's fine. Every company I go to, they're like, we need to create a new category. No, the foundation of what your personas really care about actually doesn't change, right? Because your people aren't changing. We're just trying to fit ourselves into what their mental map is. So honestly, understanding what they think of you, how they're thinking about solving their problem, that doesn't change, right? It doesn't matter if you call yourself peanut butter and jelly or AI. Like, they don't really care. They just want to know how you can fix it. Now, it does help when you start to like go into the conversation. You can't just say I'm peanut butter and jelly if you're not, but that foundation doesn't change. It's all about around them, and they will actually help to guide how you talk about the new category.
All right, and last question. So when you have buyer personas, user personas, and jobs to be done, how do you decide what to use and for who? I feel like jobs to be done was like such a buzzword a couple years ago in my organization. You could almost play a drinking game in meetings of how many times is somebody going to say, I need to hear what the job to be done is.
Yes. In fact, that just happened in a few meetings not that long ago that I was like, oh man, I thought we were done with that. We're not. Honestly, it varies on your personas and what actually needs to be used for who. So a lot of times, like, we think about user personas being more in the product side. You have to like focus in on just being technical, but that's not always true, right? Like, they don't always just need that type of content. Buyer personas don't always just need like the fluffy content. So I think that, again, it really comes down to understanding that human being and what is actually really, really valuable for them, and then getting some of that prioritization just depending on who's actually within that cycle.
All right, it looks like that was the last question. Thank you so much, Mindy. One more round of applause for Mindy here.
Thank you.
Thank you.